Hello students, in the previous class we start the term what is called the principles of economics, but before we explaining the term principles of economics, we study some most important component like what is called the trade off, what is called the opportunity cost, then what is the concept of your scarcity and where from the term economics extracted, that is called the oikonomos. The Greek word oikonomos, which means the household management, how the household make the decisions, how make the decisions of the society also be, all the decision it will takes place because of scarce resources. Considering those scarce resources and unlimited ends, right, we have to explain the study the term what is called the 10 principles of economics. In the previous class, we start with the first 4 principles which is to be related to the how the people make its decisions. And those 4 principles are out of the 10 most important principles, the first 4 principles related to the how the people make its decisions. Like the first principles tells us the people face trade off. He faced some sort of trade off between the present and future, the trade off between the how you have to be spent the money in the currently or in the future, how the students spend the time, how the parents to spend its given money income in a particular month, or how the government make the trade off between efficiency and inequality, right, or it is called the equality and efficiency. Then while you move to the second principles, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. That means, if you try to get certain things, you have to sacrifice certain things. So, that is the second principles. That means, if you take into account to gain certain part, let us say you are interested for getting certain things, that definitely you have to sacrifice certain things. It is not so that you always gain. No, it is not so. You are going to be gain if you sacrifice it. That is the second principles of economics. The third principles tells us rational people think at margins. All the rational peoples, because here the terms the rational and the margin. The rational in the sense the people always thinks in the positive sense, in the positive way to thinking. His intention is to be acquire more when receiving at the less price or something else. That is the concept of the rational people, and always the rational people think in terms of a margin. If the marginal benefit is there, that means you are comparing the term marginal cost with the marginal benefit. If the benefit is more than the cost, definitely you are going to be purchase it, right. You have to take the decision for that particular product if the additional benefit is much more than the amount of the cost to be involved in it, right. That is the third principles. The fourth principles tells us people always respond towards the incentives. If there is no incentives, no way the rational people move to that side. The fourth principles, that the last part of your people's makes decisions, the micro principles, all the 4 principles to belong to the micro principles, right. And those micro principles, the last principles tells us always the rational people the thing in terms of the incentives. If there is some incentives, then you have to be mold for that particular product. As I cited the example, suppose the price of Golgappa for each and every unit of the product is given to the 1 rupee, and with the help of the 10 rupees you purchase the 10 units of the Golgappa. If the price falls, instead of the 1 rupee per piece, right now it is the 50 paisa, but you are going to be spend the same 10 rupees, you are going to spend the same 10 rupees, but while you are spending the 10 rupees, but you have to purchase the 20 units of it, instead of 10 units right now you have to purchase 20 units. Then how your demand to be increases when price falls? The demand increases because you got some sort of incentives. What is that incentives? The purchasing power. The purchasing power of the currency to be increases. When price fall, people's purchasing power to going to be increases. As the purchasing power increases, then you try to purchase the more and more amount of it. Exactly in the same manner, in every expenses, he always think about the incentives. Where there is a incentives, you have to move to that particular product. So, those 4 principles what we cover in the last class. Now, we have to move to the next all the principles are there. Let us start with the principle number 5. Principle number 5 to 7, 5, 6 and 7. These 3 principles the related to the how people interact, how people interact, right. In the first 4 principles deals with the micro principles. These are the things either the people's how the people it be make its decisions. Right now these 3 principles related to the how people to be interact with each other. The first start with the term, the 5th principles, the trade make everyone better off. Make everyone better off. What is that trade? Trade means the trading between the countries, the trading between the nations or something else. And here to be makes the everyone to be better off. Why you take the trade off? I mean, why we take the trade between the countries? Because each and every country try to specialize each and every product. I mean, देखिए सब country प्रति product रे केवले self sufficient नथिबो सब बड़े अन्य country पर dependent थिबे, right? So as we depending on the other countries, now what to do in those cases? We have to specialize a specific product. आमर जोटा आम पाखे अवेलेबल अच्छी रिसोर्सेस रॉ मटेरियल जोटा अवेलेबल अच्छी स्किल्ड लेबर अच्छा आम जोटा प्रोडक्शन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करिया कथा आम जाको प्रोडक्शन करिया आमर सीता स्ट्रेंथ बढ़िया कथा. We have to make specialize in that particular product where the I mean the cost of the production to be less to producing it, and importing those things what we are able to produce, no doubt those the second product also going to be produced, but in order to producing that it cost more. It cost more to us. As it cost more to us, therefore, instead of purchasing that, which country has a having that means specialized, I mean the advantages in the production of that particular product must have to be produced that product, and those countries to be produce that product at the huge quantity, the cost of the production to be less, right. So that means what we have to do, let us say that the 2 product A and B, we have to specialize in the A product, the other country must be specialized in the second product, that is the B product, and we have to, as the both the countries are required A and B, so that means we export the product A in lieu of the product B, right. So that the concept of trade off. Why the trade off takes place? Because there is a better off, that means all the economy to be better off when we make the trade off between the countries. You have to study in the I mean in the microeconomics in the last part of the distribution chapters, that is called as the Ricardian theory of rent. In that particular Ricardian theory of your trade also we have to specialize in the comparative cost, theory of comparative cost. In that particular theory of comparative cost you are going to be study the term what the trade stands for, and in which way the comparative cost to be takes place, absolute advantages, relative advantages, and we can be comparing the product and the cost of the product on the basis of the cost product deficiency, I mean differences, the trading to be takes place. That is the 5th principles. What the principles tells us, that trade makes everyone to be better, because each and every country it is very difficult to specialize each and every product. Therefore, those products which have to be have some sort of advantage have to be specialize that product and import the other product in lieu of this specialized product. Next, move to the 6th principles. The 6th principle takes us, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities. Markets are usually a good way to utilize, that means organize the economic activities. What is the organizing the economic activities? Here the point tells us what type of economy is to be that, whether it is a capitalist economy or socialistic economy or it is a mixed economy. The socialistic economy in that case, that means here in that particular case the government have to be sole right upon it. Each and every product going to be manufactured, the decision will be taken by that government, what to produce, how to produce, how much to produce, all that is decided by that particular country, and that particular government will be deciding the things what are going to be manufactured. But if you take into the capitalistic point of view, in that particular case it is the each and every individual going to be decide what to do, what not to do. Now, if there is a concept of the mixed economy also with that, where we are taking into account the some characteristics of your, I mean, take into account your capitalist economy as well as the socialistic economy. And here the 10, I mean the out of the 10 principles, the 6th principle tells us markets are usually at the good organizing the economic activities. What all the trading, or whether the trading to be takes place, whether the consumption, production, what any sort of activity to takes place inside the economy, all to be organized decision undertaken by the government. And there is an invisible hand. Here the concept of your invisible hand, invisible hand. This invisible hands comes under your market point of view. If you take into account the terms of the Adam Smith, he take into account there is an invisible hand. All the things, if you take into account the macroeconomy, inside the macroeconomy you have to study the term sales law of market. John Baptist say he take into account supply creates its own demand. What are going to be produced is automatically demanded. There is no questions of your overproductions or underproductions. So, each and everything have to be what you are going to be manufactured, the same sort of things going to be disbursed inside the economy. So, that means there is an invisible hand. Okay. So, the government, the economy plays its own role in order to minimizing the process. No way it is that means the interpretations to, I mean the anyone to enter into and make decision, make the conflict situations. Okay. So, that the concept of the invisible hand, and that way to be the good way to organize the economic activities is the what type of society is to be that, what type of government, whether the capitalistic or the socialistic or the mixed economy. Move to the last point of your how the people to be interact. In that case, the government can sometime improve, government can sometime improve market outcome. So, market outcome, government can sometimes improve the market outcomes. Here to improve the market outcomes, it consists of your two things. One is called as the, if you take the case of your market failure and externalities along with the property right. Property right, market failure and externality. These are some sort of examples of this particular concepts. This principles consider the government can sometimes improve the market outcomes. Market outcome is the productions, what the producer going to be the produce, what the government going to be serve, right, that the outcome of the productions, right, or the outcome of the services. Every sort of things we take into account the term outcome, that is called the market outcome, the output, right, and that output can be increased when there is a property right. That means, if there is a right, yes, there is a concept of we filling activities, these things belongs to me, and thereby interest to be increases, how to improve our productions. We have to provide more time to that particular sector. If there is a concept of the property right, if there is no property right, we filling, then nothing going to be takes place. No one, the productivity never going to be increased. The productivity increases if there is a concept of that is called the property right. Along with that, that outcome may be leads to the some sort of your market failure. If there is a market failure, let for example, there may be some externality. Externality means some that means the additional benefit obtained by a particular society of a person's not doing anything. It may be the positive, it may be the negative. The externality, it may be the positive externality or it may be the negative externalities. Positive externality in the sense what? What is the meaning of the positive externality? Let us say for example, suppose I gote naba gote example, suppose tam pakhre achi gai, right, tame gote flat re rahucha, se flat re two storage building, let for example the ground floor and the first floor to be that, those that be reside in the ground floor, he to be kept some sort of cow shed. He preparing some cow shed, and inside the cow shed he kept let us say 2 or 3 cows are there along with the cattle. Then what happen? If we do the things, if we sell the milk of the that means the byproduct of the cow, we sell the milk, and those milk to be distributed in the nearby society with the, I mean, pure milk is that. You also be get some, as you are to be settle in the fast flow, you receiving the best milk also with that, without any sort of mixture and so on, with a reasonable price. So, that is the benefit one side, but second side, the negative externality is that the cow dung and all the wastage of that particular cow shit. If it deposit those things in the nearby house, then you have to inhale the bad smell. That bad smell it will be created by those byproduct, the cow dung and so on. Then you have to take some sort of negative externalities. You are to be, I mean, losing certain things. You have to be, I mean, so you get some sort of externality, but that externality treated as a negative externality. You are not doing anything, but you are to extracting the things. Then how to minimizing it? In order to minimizing that negative externalities, then you have to make some sort of complaint to that particular person. After making complaint, then he may be lower down the price for the milk and so on. In that particular mutual bargaining, you can minimize the problem. Exactly the same manner, let us say there are the two fields of the product. I mean the beta field achi and productions, agricultural field. Mr. A is the one particular person, he is to be going to be spread all sides, all sort of your chemical fertilizers, right, in his own field, but the way the wind move from one direction to the another directions, where in which direction the wind is flow, in that particular you have a particular field. But without using any sort of without spending a single price on the chemical fertilizer or the pesticides, you are the gaining, your production power to be increases, your productivity, agricultural production to be increases, what you produces it increases, whether to be let us say rice or it to be let us say any sort of your wheat or something else. Your production to be increases, but the person who are to be spent on the way of your using the chemical fertilizer and pesticides, you are going to be losing it. Then in that case what happened? The disturbances to be takes place, you are to be benefit, that is called the positive externality. Now, जो positive externality पाइला तक कैसे minimize करिए by the way of the mutual bargaining once again. But if the two parties are involved, then mutual bargaining can be takes place. If the last party to be involved, government must have to be interfere. Similarly, take the another examples. Suppose inside a particular densely populated colony, you try to manufacture in certain product, and that product, I mean that particular production sector emit the huge amount of smoke. Okay, ଯେତେବେଳେ smoke ଛାଡ଼ିଛି, then entire society to be polluted, entire environment to be polluted, and the water to be polluted, air to be polluted and so on. Then there is some sort of breathing problem inside that colony. Then in that case what to do? That the last party to be involved, in that case government have to be take some sort of steps. So, that the concept here, the market failure, that is the concept is the outcome, market outcome, the production, what the production manufactured, it provides some sort of outcome. That outcome may be leads to the positive externality or may leads to the negative externalities. ଯେତେବେଳେ negative externality होची ସେତେବେଳେ government कौन करियो tax impose करियो in order to minimizing that particular negative externalities. Or in the case of if there is a positive externalities, in order to minimizing, in order to compensate that particular loser party by the way of the subsidies. ସେଠି ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ସବସିଡିଜ୍ ଦେଉଛି, ଯେତେବେଳେ ନେଗେଟିଭ୍ ଏକ୍ସଟର୍ନାଲିଟି ହେଉଛି, ଯେତେବେଳେ ପଜିଟିଭ୍ ଏକ୍ସଟର୍ନାଲିଟି ହେଉଛି ସେଠି ସେ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ଇମ୍ପୋଜ୍ କରୁଛି. And all the things related to this, the last principles of your out of the 10 principles of economics, that is called the how the people the interact. That means in which way the bargaining to be takes place, how that means the better of how the trade to be takes place on the basis the better of, and market outcome to be there, and there is a what type of organization set up to be that, in which way you have to communicate what to produce, how to produce and how much to produce. Now after that, now move to the what are the rest 3 most important the principles of economics, and those 3 principles of your that is the last 3 principles related to the macroeconomic problems, right. So what are those principles? Let us start with the 8th number of principles, but is all the things are related to the macroeconomy, macro principles. The macro principles here, the things of the 8, 9 and 10, all the 3 it belongs to the macro one. Let us start with the first one. A country's standard of living, a country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce, depends on its ability to produce goods and services, goods and services. A standard of living, that means the living standard of a particular country, it completely depending upon what type of goods are going to be the manufactured. So, country ta kon manufacturing korchi, ko type of product manufacturing korchi, whether it is producing, let us say that means consumer goods or the producers goods, that is the first most important point. Second, whether it is utilizing the labor intensive method or the capital intensive method of the productions, what type of product you are going to be utilized, because the capacity to produce it depends, that the productivity can be increased if there is an incentive, productivity can be increased if there is the proper utilization of the resources, and the resources, if you take into account comparing the term what is called the developed countries and the developing countries, or you can take the underdeveloped countries. In the developed countries, what you face, their GDP is to be increases, that the gross domestic product to be more and more. In every quarter, that the each and every manufacturer, the production to be increases. But what about in case of your developing nations, like in India, what do you find? In this case, your GDP not increase at the faster rate, it always lie in between, let us say 4 to 5 or the 3.5 to the 4.5 max to max 5% per annum. So, if you take into account for the quarterly increment is very negligible, right. So, the developed countries have some sort of added advantages in their productivity. Why it is so? Because as the standard of living is to be more, because the standard of living, a country is affluent because its the productivity is to be more. His national income increases, per capita income increases, there is no, that is the inequalities between the have and have nots. You can minimize, you can bridge the gap between the have and have nots. So, that means here we find the term, the production can be increased, the productivity increases means GDP also increases, gross domestic product. And while you comparing the term national income, we always take into account the net national product at market price. We take into account net national product at market price. Here the market price we have to take into account, and net we have to calculate, we have to taking into account the depreciation on the side of it, and you have to add the net flow of income from abroad. Those things you have to study in case of your market national income, in case of your particularly in the national income accounting. Now move to the ninth problem. The ninth principles tells us the price rises when government print too much currency. Price rises when government print more currencies or money. As you know, the best principles, the cited, suggested by the Keynes, Keynes says too much money chases too few goods. That the concept of inflation. Inflation in the economy, inflation will takes place if we manufacturing more and more amount of currency. If you inflation means कौन जेतेले दरदाम वृद्धि पाउची ता कहउचे inflation. जेतेले कोनोसे प्रोडक्ट रो जेतेले हम देखुचे नॉर्मली दरदाम वृद्धि पाइबा को कहा जाय inflation, मुद्रास्फीति जा कहा जाय. In that way, what is the meaning of it? That things to be explained by the Keynes. You can enter into a market by full bag of money. गोटे मार्केट को जीवो पूरा फुल बैग ऑफ मनी नहीं की जीवो, but you come out from the market with a full pocket of vegetable. माने बैग रे टंका नहीं की जीवो, पॉकेट रे परिया नहीं की आसीबा. That the concept of your inflation, right? So that means why this situation takes place, because the too much currency, when the government, when you manufacturing more and more amount of the currency, that is the too much money to be circulated in the economy, that means the value of the money going to be reduces. As the value of the money to be reduces, that the demand increases, supply is not there. That means supply is less than the demand, obviously demand more and price further increases, that is leads to a huge amount of crisis in the economy. So that means the inflationary situations always take into account inside the economy when government print more amount of the currencies. And move to the last point, the most important point is that society face short-run trade-off. Society face short-run trade-off. Society face short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. between inflation and unemployment, right. So, there is a trade off here again in the macro point of view, there is a trade off. What the trade off? The trade off between inflation and unemployment. Government कौन चाहिए अधिक इन्फ्लेशनरी सिचुएशन कि कम इन्फ्लेशनरी सिचुएशंस जदि से अधिक इन्फ्लेशन करिबो ओबियसली एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट हबो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट रिड्यूस करिवे बट आमे कहबा नै नै आमे प्राइस को कमेबा इन्फ्लेशन को कमेबा जेते इन्फ्लेशन को कमे आमे कोन करिबा इन्फ्लेशन को कमेला माने एपडे अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट हेजिबो ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट टू बी जनरेटेड. So, the what the economy going to be takes place because it is a short run, it is not a long run phenomenon, it is a purely in the short run phenomenon. Inside the short run, the what the economy going to be taken, I mean in which way the government to be take the certain steps, whether you to be interested for the minimizing the unemployment or minimizing the price rise in the price level. If you try to minimizing the price level, rise in the price level, then what happen? Unemployment is generated. If you take into account, yes, my target is the unemployment to be explode, I mean employment generation to be takes place. अधिकरु अधिक employment generation create करिबो जदि अधिकरु अधिक generation करिबो हमर employment opportunity create करियो government ताले हम कोन देखिबा inflation हबो. So there is a always trade off that things to be explained by the Phillips, which the famous economist who belongs to the that is the British economist. He explained the things in case of your inflation chapter, which is going to be studied in the macroeconomic also later on. So, these are the 10 most important principles of economics. Again, in this case of your inflations, we can finding out the term what is called the inflation is unjust, deflation is inexpedient, and out of these two, inflation I mean deflation is worse. Inflation and deflation, I mean देखो जी मुद्रास्फीति और अपस्फीति. Mudraspiti in the sense when the price level rises, that is called the inflation. When the price level to be fall, that is called the deflation situation. But which one is to be important? Which is the best one? The best one, both have to be evil effect. Both terms provide the evil effect in the economy. Economy पाई inflation ठीक नुहे कि deflationary situation ठीक नुहे. But out of these two, inflation is the best. Why inflation is the best? He explained the terms in a best. I mean the quotation is given by the Keynes, that is the inflation act as the tonic for the economic development. Economic को development करिया पाई हेले economic को development करिया पाई हेले inflation जरूरी. That means like the doctor prescribe, take always each and every day you have to take into account 1 spoon of brandy. प्रतिदिन जदि गोटे spoon of brandy जदि नबो ताहले तमरो देह किछि खराब होबो नाही, right? So that but instead of doing that you take into account the whole bottle of brandy in a one day or the one time, then what happened to the economy? So exactly in the same manner, too much inflation is the bad for the economy. So therefore, can suggest a mild inflation act as a tonic for the economic development. So this is all about what the principles, the 10 most important principles of economics. Those 10 principles of economics to be split into 3 parts. The some are to be how the people make the decisions. In the first 4 principles related to the people's decisions making. The last 3 principles relate to the macro principles, that means how the economy as a whole, how the economy act as a whole. So here is the whole economy decisions. In the middle 3, I mean the middle, that is called the 5, 6 and 7, those things how the people to be interact. So this is the way to explain the whole bit of the principles of economics, the 10 principles of economy. Thank you for today.